Digital Network Advertising. One last time, Digital Network Advertising, 909-222-9293.
KCAA is your CNBC News affiliate. We're the station that gets down to business.
The revolution starts now. You're about to enter the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show. The Jake and Cliff Show is on. Showing you how real estate investing can make your dreams, your future, your financial freedom, your reality. And now, your hosts, Jake and Cliff.
That is right. I am Jake. He is Cliff. He is not speaking yet. He could speak, but he chooses not to. This is the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff, and then KCAA 1050 AM, 102.3 and 106.5 on the FM dial. Our on-air call-in number for those of you who want to call in. I don't know if there's going to be any time today, and we'll tell you why in a minute. But who wants to call in with comments or questions on real estate is 888-909-1050. And for those of you listening at another time or day, you can call us off air at 800-396-1501. Leave us a message of any length, including your contact information, and we'll get back to you. And now what I would like to do is I would like to introduce, without further ado, one of the reasons this show is so great, better than all the other shows. We have a real live real estate expert. His name is Cliff Gager. Ladies and gentlemen, Cliff Gager. Cliff, how are you today?
And the crowd goes, yay. So, yeah, it's funny because it's radio and nobody can see my antics over here. If you're watching on the YouTube feed, we have the video so you can see the video. And I was doing the raise the roof sign for all the crowd. Anyways.
I know, I was trying to ignore that.
Sometimes I go like, I move the mic up and down, try to distract Jake because he could see me on the screen there, and it's a lot of fun. So, anyways, yeah, we got a great show today. We'll tell you about it here in a few minutes. We were really excited that this week, normally we would be having an event this weekend, but we kind of took a break in between, and I'm actually going to be speaking in Los Angeles this week. We'll put up the information there on the
You're
website.
Gonna be all over Los Angeles.
All over, yeah. I mean, that's good because
paint that toddling town.
Well, and the thing is, Jake, is people are begging for real estate education. A lot of people have contacted me over the last week saying, they're ready to learn how to do this the right way. They're ready to learn how to, get over these speed bumps in life that they've hit, which is, you and I know, is a lack of education. It's a lack of, it's the fake information out there that's been going around. And what happens is those people find that information, unfortunately, before they get to the good stuff. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we're going to do this coming month. A lot of exciting things happening, and coffee. We should talk about coffee, at the wonderful joys of how coffee completely can change things, and especially.
Wait, do we have coffee as a sponsor this week, or did I miss a meeting or something? Or?
No, but I was really, you could tell I'm really amped up today because I made my coffee with Red Bull.
Oh my gosh. So carbonated coffee now.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but so we're waiting on information from our board operator, technician, engineer guy.
He's an engineer. He's a real engineer. I've seen him on the train and everything.
Oh, was that he had the conductor hat? No,
I saw him going by on the railroad one day. I said, "Hey, Joe, how you doing?"
No, he didn't wave back though.
He didn't wave back.
No. So yeah,
he had that look on his face that said, "I'm a train engineer."
Did he mean trained engineer or train?
No, I think it was, because he blew the horn right after, so I think he meant the train.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah.
But I mean, that's an interesting duality there. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sure Joe will appreciate it as he thinks over this part of the interview later on.
Yeah, so we've got a really interesting show today. So we've got a interview with a California attorney. Jake, do you want to introduce or tell everybody what we're talking about today?
Yeah, the thing
this is
that
right up your alley.
This seems a little. I know, and Cliff, I was afraid that you thought the interview was getting out of hand because he and I just started talking about law aspects of it, and it's like, oh no, I've created a monster. What have I unleashed here? Oh my goodness! But no, this is Ken Carlson. He's with Cal Tenant Law, and of all things, Cliff, of all things that we would be talking about with real estate investors, and I don't know why we're doing it. Perhaps you can explain it to me. We're talking about eviction law, and by eviction we mean things like unlawful detainer, forcible detainer. We're talking about things about what happens when you and we're doing this because forewarned is forearmed.
Yes,
Ken
that's exactly why.
Ken is presenting the other side. He is a tenant advocate, and he's going to show you that there are ways. It's one thing you've heard me say in law, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Yes. And if there isn't one way to do something, there's usually another way. And Ken has found that way, and we're going to listen to him talk about the state of eviction law in California and what he can do about it and why we should all, as real estate investors and students, pay attention to it.
Right. Well, and the reason that I wanted to get Ken on, and we'll get to his interview here right after the break in about 2 minutes, according to our engineer, Joe. So I'm texting him, and we're making a little joke, so we're having a good time today. But when we come back for the interview, I want you guys to listen, because if you get into real estate investing and you get into this game, eventually you're going to own rental properties.
Yes, you are.
And one of the things that you have to be aware of is the law, and the law pertaining to how you treat your tenants, what you do while your tenants are there, how do you deal with complaints, how do you deal with situations where sometimes they don't pay their rent. And one of the things that is really smart is, if you've ever read the book The Art of War, is to know your enemy. And now I'm not saying that your tenants are your enemy, they're your customers. But if you don't understand what they have in their, quote, quiver, it could lead to a lot of drama and trouble.
You should have just stuck with forewarned is forearmed, Cliff. You went off onto this Sun Tzu Art of War stuff, and you screwed it all up.
No, because once you understand how the system works for the advantage of the tenant, as a landlord, it can make your life a lot easier. It can make a lot of the troubles go away. And, well, we're up on a break now, so we'll get back to that when we go.
All right, so we'll be right back with the Real Estate Expert Online with Jake and Cliff after these couple of messages.
You're listening to the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show. To start your own personal financial revolution, call 1-800-396-1501 or visit realestateexpertonline.com. Jake and Cliff will be right back.
Hey, Crystal, what you up to?
Oh, Fred dragged me to one of those dumb real estate seminars.
Oh, did you learn the secret to flipping houses?
No, their secret was a $40,000 sales pitch.
You know, John and I flipped 2 houses this year.
Really? Wish we did that. Did you fall for one of those overpriced programs?
No way. We use Cliff Gager's online training at realestateexpertonline.com.
Realestateexpertonline.com? Sounds expensive. Those seminar people were so pushy. Fred almost blew our entire life savings.
No, the price was so low we were skeptical at first, but it's exactly what we needed.
What's that website again?
RealestateExpertOnline.com. Cliff strategies are the real deal.
RealestateExpertOnline.com. Oh, here it is. Okay, I signed up for his webinar. I'm super excited.
I have a venti mocha for Crystal.
Oh, that's me. Thanks, Linda. RealestateExpertOnline.com will finally make our dreams come true.
Yep, RealestateExpertOnline.com worked for us.
Ever dream about flipping houses like on TV? Want more money in your bank account to do the things you want to do? If so, get ready to begin your personal financial revolution with Cliff Gager's house flipping training. Cliff's 25 years of experience will help you finally understand how to get great deals and create profits quickly while achieving your dream of financial freedom. This training gets straight to the good stuff so you can start immediately. Cliff was the mentor's mentor for many of the TV and seminar so-called gurus. He was the man behind the curtain, but now you can eliminate those overpriced gurus and get Cliff's best knowledge direct. If you really want to make money flipping houses, you need RealestateExpertOnline.com. Your personal financial revolution starts now. Go to RealestateExpertOnline.com. That's RealestateExpertOnline.com. RealestateExpertOnline.com.
Hey Fred, Linda told me you went to one of those real estate seminars.
Yeah, what a downer. It was nothing but a 3-day sales pitch to sell more overpriced training. Plus, the 3-day training they did was so vague. It was a waste of time.
Linda and I almost did that too, but we got lucky and found Cliff Gager first. Did you and Crystal check out Cliff's RealestateExpertOnline.com website?
Yeah, we did. Cliff really put together a complete program. RealestateExpertOnline.com gave us all the missing pieces we've been searching for.
Yeah, the gurus only want to sell you expensive coaching programs. Crazy.
I know, right? We almost handed over $40,000 to those so-called real estate gurus.
Not only did RealestateExpertOnline.com save Linda and I $40,000, it also helped us start flipping houses and making profits quickly.
Hi, I'm Cliff Gager, and you can start your own personal financial revolution today with RealestateExpertOnline.com. That's RealestateExpertOnline.com.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff. Your personal financial revolution for financial independence continues.
All right, and so we're back. This is the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff. I'm Jake, he's Cliff, and he will be talking in a second. Today, and of course we're on KCAA at 1050 on the AM and 102.3 on the FM. And today we have a special guest with us, Ken Carlson of a Cal Tenant Law. That's right, Ken? Is that it? Cal Tenant Law?
That's correct.
And Ken is an attorney, and he's going to be talking about, and I'm going to bring this up to him, but I just want to do the intro right now. He's going to be talking about an area that is actually good for real estate investors to know about who listen to the show, but it's kind of counterintuitive. We're going to get into that, but with no further ado, muss or fuss, I'm going to introduce our guest, Ken Carlson. Ken, welcome to the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I wanted to get one thing out of the way before we get into the law stuff and the interesting stuff. Apparently, you are either an aficionado or an actual musical comedy writer. What would you call that? Lerner and Lowe?
I'm a playwright and composer.
You're a playwright and composer.
Awesome.
Tell us about that. Let's get that out of the way.
All right. It's a musical comedy. It's called Legal Ethics. And
that is a comedy.
It's the intentional oxymoron and the crux of the problem.
Yeah.
Right, like military intelligence. Right, I got it.
Correct. So it's a lampoon on the entire legal system from the inside. I've been doing this 38 years, and
wow.
I'm disgusted. So it's quite cathartic for me just to make fun of the whole system that I have to deal with every day.
Well, I know, and I agree with that, and I think you and I could as an aside off the air, have a lot of fun retelling war stories. Some of those I tell on the air, like the time opposing counsel in a case called me up and asked me how to do the discovery that I had sent him. That was hilarious. That was talk about a laugh riot. But anyway, we want to, that's stuff that I've already talked about on the show and get into later. But what we want to do is, you are doing basically landlord-tenant law, but you're kind of doing it, correct me if I'm wrong, from the tenant's point of view. In other words, you're a tenant advocate. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And so what does that entail doing?
Well, first of all, I because it's an online service, caltenantlaw.com, I have to avoid conflict of interest. So I can't advise both landlords and tenants in case they both happen to be my clients. So I pick the tenant side. The vast majority of cases are evictions, but there are some where the tenant is suing the landlord either to get their security deposit back or recover for damages for wrongful eviction, that kind of thing.
Okay, and can you give a couple of interesting points about these cases? For example, and now I'm talking about the litigation, and we may actually want to start before that, but I use this as an example that these cases have a shortened time frame as far as filing the petition or the complaint, and also the response time. There's a shortened time for service, and you go to trial faster. And just feel free to jump here in any time. And a lot of times these things get done in 2 weeks to a month, whereas even with the accelerated docket concept that the Superior Court in California is using, a lot of cases I've been able to get a lot of cases to go for 2 or 3 years. But tenant law is different, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is. You're right. An eviction of a tenant is the fastest law in the state of California. Fastest kind of case.
Yeah. What are the time frames? What are the time frames?
Okay. The fastest, when I was representing landlords, the fastest from the notice to the lockout was like a month.
Yeah.
That's really before that, and that's if you do everything right and the clerks don't screw up and so forth. Right. But on the tenant side, my record is 4.5 years, and I've got another one that's 4 years and 2 months. I cannot take all the credit for that. I have to thank opposing counsel who are grossly incompetent and just can't get it right.
Well, I know. I mean, I having done these, I can tell you that one of the things that I have observed my colleagues, or I guess I should say our colleagues, have problems with is demurs. They don't know how to demur. They don't know how to fight against a demur. And I had a case go on for 18 months once just on demurs alone. Just for people who don't know, and I'm not trying to steal Ken's thunder, but I really love being able to talk to a colleague on the show. A demur is a device in California law. They exist in federal law. And Ken, feel free to jump in here at any time, but they only exist in a general sense. In California, you can specially demur and you can do a general demur. And basically what that is you're saying that the form of the pleading is wrong. The pleading hasn't sufficiently alleged a cause of action, and that would be the general demur. And special demurs, of course, they are more technical on more technical aspects of the pleading. So have you, is a demur, but my experience, honestly, I've done a couple of these things in my career, but I haven't done a lot of them, and you're kind of the pro from Dover on this, Ken. Is demur a technique that you would use, and would you like to comment on that as a device?
Sure. The demur is an attack on the accusation of the complaint. It's saying you're not accusing me correctly, or you don't have the right to accuse me, and so forth. In 38 years of doing this, there have only been about 5 cases where I have not been able to file a demur to find some flaw in the complaint itself. It's possible to look the other way. You don't have to do it, but since from the tenant's point of view, they're trying to get more time to find another place or save up the money to go or whatever, a demur can buy them no less than 2 weeks and often more than a month. And so it's almost always filed. And the plaintiff's lawyers are so sloppy in the work that they do because they generally get away with it.
Yeah.
Paralegals or secretaries are writing up the paperwork. It's very easy to find mistakes and call them on it.
Well, and not only that, but what I find in this, and we're going to talk about this some more with regard to other even more fundamental aspects of this whole process, is that they're just using forms. And it's kind of monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
Just because you've got a bar license or you went to paralegal school is one thing I always say, doesn't really mean that you know what you're doing. And a lot of times they're cranking these things out. They are not they are not of a mind to contemplate the legal reasons for doing some of these things the way they do them, and so they just use forms. And if you go to the litigation, and I'm thinking about something else now. I'm thinking about trusts and how trusts get broken into all the time. It's what I call a horror show. I take it that's kind of something that you see in tenant law as well.
Oh, sure. Sure. Well, because the landlord side is basically filling out forms.
Yeah.
The secretaries are writing them.
Yeah.
When I was in regular practice representing landlords, I just had my secretaries fill out the form.
Right.
The tenant side requires a lot more thinkum, and the demur is actually the funnest part because it has nothing to do with the facts. It has to do with lawyer versus lawyer.
I agree.
And can you find the mistakes and keep them spinning?
Well, I would think that would be the fun part, is the lawyer versus lawyer part.
It is fun. Go ahead, Ken.
Anyway, but the reason a case can take so long is simply because the landlord's lawyers make a lot of mistakes, and I catch them in it and have to file papers that are set for motions before the court that have the effect of getting the additional time.
Well, and let's talk about
mills. Some of these big eviction mills in California tout themselves as being, the powerhouses, but they're the worst. The better lawyers tend to be in the much smaller firms, 1 or 2 lawyers.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about on our show, Ken, is we talk about how our students and people who are contemplating real estate investing or who actually are incipient or intermediate real estate investors have to be the expert. You have to be the expert. You can't be monkey see, monkey do. You have to understand why things are done the way they are done. You have to become the expert. And the rationale I explain on this is if you don't, you are always going to be overawed and intimidated and let's just say frightened by people who have degrees, who have business licenses, who have bar licenses, who have certifications, yada, yada, yada.
But the point is when you're sitting there and you're talking about on our show, Ken, we talk about how some of the professionals don't know what they're doing, and I mean that's what we're talking about right now. Is a lot of them just fill out forms, and that is the joy in your line of work now that you're working with on the tenant side, and we kind of talk with the landlords. So some of the things that we like to tell the landlord is, make sure you do things right. Make sure you have a proper lease in place. Make sure your terms are proper and follow the law, so that if you do run into an event where you have somebody that is not paying their rent, that you can go through the proper procedures and do things right, and not have the long, lengthy time frames that you're so famous for acquiring. And but a lot of times I would think that most of your clients are there for a reason other than just not paying rent. Would that be true?
Well, the non-payment of rent situation begs the question.
Right.
I mean, there are so many reasons for not paying the rent. Yeah, it could be that the tenant just, got laid off or whatever, had an injury, and they just don't have the money. But the majority of the time, the cases I'm dealing with, it's uninhabitable conditions. The landlord just won't fix anything because they can threaten the tenant with eviction if they dare complain about it. And so the tenants finally say, look, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'd say more than half of the cases that involve non-payment of rent also involve uninhabitable conditions and the landlord's refusal to fix them. I mean, it's his own property, but you'd think, well, he'd have some pride in it, but why should he when he can just threaten the tenant with eviction rather than fix his own property?
Right. Well, and let me ask you, there is, depending on state to state, wherever you go, it's like land trusts in Illinois. Everything's been codified, but originally the trust concept came from common law. In California law in many areas is so well developed that everything has been transmuted from common law or case decisions to codification. And codification just means it's in the code somewhere. It means it's a statute. It means it's a rule or a regulation. And that's advanced. When you have that, you're in a state that's advanced. And when we're talking about habitability, there's something called a warranty of habitability. And I wonder if I could get you to comment on that. In some states, that's an implied or an express warranty, but maybe it's not risen to the level of a statute. What's the situation on that in California?
All right. The implied habitability has actually been around since 1974, a case called Green versus Superior Court, where the Supreme Court of California said that before the landlord can demand rent, they have to have provided a habitable dwelling. And if there is a substantial reduction of habitability, then the tenant has the legal right to withhold rent as a means of forcing the landlord to make the repairs. So it's not a statute, but there is a statute that deals with it. If the landlord files an eviction case for non-payment of rent and the tenant is able to show that the place had a substantial reduction in habitability, then Code of Civil Procedure 1174.2 says that the judge or jury is to decide the fair rental value of the place given those conditions, and on the condition that the tenant pays that lowered amount within 5 days, they get to stay and their tenancy is reinstated.
Well, and talking to you, I'm kind of getting excited and my mind is swimming about with questions to ask and topics to bring up, but let's stick with this from a certain standpoint. This then, if you looked at the case from the tenant's point of view and you thought there was a violation of the implied warranty of habitability, which basically states that, if you're going to rent stuff out to people, they got to be able to live in it. It's got to have heat. Floorboards can't be rotten. There can't be holes in the roof and stuff like that. Yeah. It's got to have heat, others like that. That would be a reason for doing a cross-claim, would it not?
Yeah, except that in eviction cases in California, the tenant is not allowed to countersue until they're out of possession. They could file a separate lawsuit against the landlord, but it's going to come to trial in 2 or 3 years, whereas the landlord's eviction case is going to come to trial in a few months, generally. Right.
What about a motion to join the cases because they deal with the same subject matter? Is that something that would be successful?
No, it's not allowed for the same reason, as long as the tenant is still in possession. Civil Code 1952.3 allows cases to be joined and cross complaints to be filed once the tenant is no longer in possession, but not until then.
Yeah, and that's I mean, again, just what it is, but there's nothing like having a ripe cross claim that you can bring to bear right at the time of the lawsuit by the landlord.
I've done that several times, fighting a case on a habitability basis, and after it's been going on for 3-4 months and the tenant finds a new place. As soon as the tenant moves out, I filed a cross complaint there. Now the landlord can't go forward with their eviction to get any money until the case by the tenant against the landlord is also heard, and that's going to be 2-3 years down the line.
Okay, so this is really very good. So it sounds like what you're talking to me about, Ken, is a kind of an overarching and far-reaching strategy where if you lose the lawsuit on unlawful detainer, you just don't throw up your hands in disgust and walk down the road to the next one. There's really another part of the strategy that you can bring to bear, isn't there?
Oh, sure. We first of all take the case up on appeal, so there's no res judicata effect, and secondly, file a lawsuit against the landlord for wrongful eviction.
On bringing the case up on appeal, are you going to be able to get an injunction to keep the judgment of the superior court, of the lower court, from going through?
Well, you
in other words, are they going to be able to take possession of the property, for example?
Yeah, Code of Civil Procedure 1176 allows the tenant to file a motion with the trial court, and if unsuccessful, with the appellate court, to ask for a stay pending appeal, which can be granted on the condition that the tenant pays the ongoing rent pending appeal.
Okay. All right.
Well, all I need to say at this point is, you guys have just talked right over my head, and I've been doing this for 30 years.
I just love stuff.
what I see, Ken, is a lot of our listeners are landlords, and the reason I brought you on the show today is to show them the importance of doing things correctly and doing things the right way.
I would also point out that more than half of my tenants would have easily resolved their question informally with the landlord if the landlord had only listened to them and tried to work around it.
Right.
It's the trigger happiness of management companies and resident managers and even some landlords to just jump in on the litigation and play hardball right away. And then, a year later, they're wondering why they've spent so much money over such a little amount. Working something out with the tenant is really the most cost-effective way, and a lot of landlords just don't use that. They go right to the gun.
Yes.
And the managing, and I think that there's kind of and this is why I think this is great. I love doing this interview with you, Ken, because there's a mindset amongst attorneys, the managing or supervising attorney that I worked for in one particular case, said that if you're able to get the case so that the client, the tenant that is, gets an additional 30 days to move out, that's a win.
Yeah.
But you are, and that's pervasive. I mean, that's pervasive in the profession. You get a lot of attorneys, and they handle tenant evictions that way on behalf of the tenant. That's their viewpoint. But your viewpoint is really much more expansive, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. If the tenant has any kind of case at all, the landlord will offer 30 days to go, no money, because the landlord's not expecting to get the money anyway, and 30 days is really only about 2 weeks more than what they'd have otherwise, and they don't have to pay for the lawyer to do the whole trial or risk anything.
Right.
But I always ask for a jury trial.
Always.
Yes, always. The tenant has a statutory right to a jury trial as well as a constitutional one, but it's expressed in the statute, Code of Civil Procedure 1171. And so to the extent that the tenant asks for a jury trial, now the landlord's saying, gee, I'm not going to be able to go in front of the judge who always decides in favor of the landlord.
Right.
I'm going to have to go to some other judge and spend $10,000, $15,000 on my lawyer to go before a jury and find out whether or not I'm going to win. The cure is worse than the disease.
Right. Well, and that would kind of lead towards when, as a landlord, your first thing is to listen to the tenants. I totally understand that. Give them a habitable, nice house to live in that you would probably even live in yourself if you were to put a set of ethics rules to it.
Sure.
And if you have a problem with a tenant, I think open communication probably stops, 90% of things from going south, so to speak. And, if the tenant contacts you and they pay their rent on time all the time, and they out of the blue contact you and say, hey, my husband got laid off or my wife got laid off, we're going to have a little bit of trouble. Can we do something? A lot of times, $100, $200 here and there to help save the situation versus going through the eviction process is much more profitable to the tenant, to the landlord. and less stressful. And I know as being a landlord, when you take care of your tenants, they appreciate you, and they buy you like flowers and candy and stuff, and thank you gifts. And that's right. I don't know where this adversarial type scenario came from, where it's the landlord versus the tenant. I guess in those old you must pay the rent cartoons, with the guy with the evil hat. But what is your solution if you just get to a point where the tenant does not want to leave and is in a situation? What do you think is the best solution for the landlord to do at that time? Is it to go to court and fight, or are there alternative solutions?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a broad question.
That's a broad question. Yeah.
There isn't any one-size-fits-all answer to that. I've had these situations where, like one that's in the Riverside County area here, a desert home. The air conditioning hadn't worked for the third year in a row, and it gets pretty hot there, and the landlord didn't want to spend the money to fix the air conditioning, so the tenants withheld their rent.
Right.
And they got involved in an eviction case, and it went on for 3 years.
Wow.
During which time the landlord, who didn't want to spend the money to fix up her own place and put in a new air conditioning unit, lost her house in foreclosure after spending a fortune on legal fees, and then the bank came along and is paying the tenant to go. Okay? Now, how stubborn and stupid can you be? Right?
Yeah.
If you could work out something with the tenants and say, look, okay, you want this, I want that. You go by the book. It's the cheapest way to go.
Excellent.
Tenants know when they have a good landlord.
Yes.
And they appreciate the flowers and stuff. You're not kidding.
Yes.
That actually happens. People are so appreciative. The tenant's paying the mortgage for you anyway.
Right.
It's the least risk of any kind of business in America. The least risk.
Right.
And the most benefit. There's a limited supply of housing, and there's a growing population. You can't lose.
Yeah.
So hit the greed button. Just enjoy the process. Tenant needs something fixed. Get it fixed. Give them their money's worth. You make the money in the longevity. You don't have problems. You don't have stress. When there's a vacancy, tell all the tenants in the building, hey, we got a vacancy coming up. Any of you got a friend or relative come in there?
Exactly.
You build loyalty. And, those kind of landlords, they're no good for my business.
Right, right. Well, and
I do much better with the slumlords.
Yeah, it's kind of like happy wife, happy life. It's in this case, it's happy tenant, happy life. Yeah, that's a good thing. So now, your website, Cal Tenant Law, is for tenants that are going through difficulties, and well, Jake and I know a lot of landlords out there, and I can speak for myself in saying that I know a lot of those, quote, like you just said, those slumlords. Those are the ones that we want to get out of our business. Those are the ones that we don't want to have representing the, quote, landlords. And those are the ones that you usually hear about on TV of landlords not putting air conditioners in their desert houses or heat in their winter houses. Or it can even be down to like windows. If the windows are insufficient for the houses, what's the weirdest or the most, well, let's say not weirdest, but what is the most common thing that landlords don't do that causes them to get in trouble in the scenario with a tenant saying the house isn't habitable? Because we deal with a lot of flippers and people that buy houses and flip them and then rent them to tenants. What is the most common repair item that you would see come across your desk?
Well, I tell you what, mold is growing in popularity.
Yeah.
I'm seeing. I mean, over the last 10 years, it just seems like every other case involves mold, and 30 years ago, you never heard about it.
Has there been a definitive case yet, Ken, that has cleared appeals where a finding of mold was not supported, but made a reason for an eviction not to go through?
You mean that a tenant would win on a mold defense?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know of any case where that was like the only issue or the main issue, but it certainly is a habitability issue. I mean, the uninhabitable conditions are pretty broad. They're identified in Civil Code 1941.1, which incorporates Health and Safety Code 17920.3 and so forth.
Right. So not mold specifically, but mold as one part of a larger concept of habitability.
Well, yeah. If it's hazardous to the health, which mold is, then it's an uninhabitable condition, and a tenant can win.
And the funny thing when we buy houses, one of the big jokes that we have, Ken, is mold is gold. Because when we're buying a house that has mold, everybody has... it's very dangerous, by the way. I mean, and it does cause multiple health issues.
Sure does.
But when we're buying a house, we already know that we're going to gut the house and remove that issue. But yet the seller on that type of a transaction, they'll discount the house dramatically because they just don't want to deal with it. So I would say that we've got that aspect covered, Jake, on the on having a mold issue with our tenants. So, well, we're up against the clock, and I really appreciate your time, and it was fun listening to you guys talk about legal stuff. I love one of the things, Ken, you might not know is I've always wanted to be an attorney, but one of my problems is I have anger issues. So you can't be a nice, calm attorney and say things, when you have road rage type of scenarios. I'm just kidding. It's not that bad, but I'm not a good negotiator unless it's through paperwork. That's when I really shine. But yeah, it's nice to listen to you guys. I love the way that you guys can just right out of the blue give citations and case law and the law like the 1941.1, and it's like what that stuff is. So the last thing I want to say on our interview is, and talking to our landlords, is if they get into a position, try to work their best scenario out with the tenant and making things work. Number one. Number two is, if you get to a point where you have to go through the process, one of the things I hear all the time, Ken, is landlords doing the procedure without an attorney and doing it themselves. And I would think, like our mold is gold statement, you probably have a statement for that when a tenant comes to you and the landlord is prosecuting on their own. That has to be like, nirvana for you.
Well, it certainly makes the case easy. I'm fighting an unarmed man.
Yes.
There you go.
And I would think that probably after 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months, that person then does hire an attorney. Would that be a good statement?
Yeah, but by that time, the attorney that they try to find sees that I'm on the other side, and then they don't want to take on the case.
Because,
exactly right.
The landlord would have a much better time, going with somebody who is competent.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, these landlord lawyers like to bilk their clients. They will take that anger and exploit it and run up a bill and do all kinds of things that are contrary to the financial interest, because they've got their own ego out there and they're running up a bill and they're letting this thing go on for a long time. So basically, you got to watch out for who the lawyer is too.
Right, right.
But basically, the thing for investors, for our students to listen to about this, is that it really doesn't pay to be adversarial like this when you've got somebody like Ken Carlson out there, because this is not a cut and dried issue. And as I was saying before, and I say generally, just because a person's an expert doesn't mean that he knows what he's doing. And these people make mistakes all the time. They make mistakes starting with the most fundamental notifications to a tenant.
Yeah.
And then it just goes on from there. And Ken, I'm sure you would agree with me when I say that it runs the gamut. And that's kind of where you live on a lot of this stuff, isn't it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they were careful, there's not much that I could do on the other side except present our facts and the law that applies. But I'm safe. It'll never happen.
And it's not that hard to be that careful, and yet these so-called experts, they still don't get it right. Even the attorneys don't get it right. And so to our students and to our general listening audience, I would say pay attention. This guy's out here. We're going to ask him to give his contact information in a minute. But this guy is out here, and if somebody gets a hold of him, you'll be sorry that you were so adversarial with your tenants and had such a haughty and arrogant disposition and demeanor. It's better to always work with people to the extent that you can. So Cliff, do you have anything else you want to go into here?
No, we're up against the clock, Ken.
All right.
Really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that the listeners got some great advice. I know that I really admire what you do for people that are in situations that they're dealing with those quote slumlords and whatnot. Again, your website is caltenantlaw.com, and can people get the legal ethics MP3 right there on your website?
That's right. I'm making it available for free as an MP3 download.
Oh, that is great. Awesome. So
that's exciting. I'm going to get that.
Yeah. So
if anybody else would like to put on a production, contact me.
Oh my God, that would be great. That would be because we're in California, and there are a lot of people that are listening to the station now that might work in the industry that would be able to help you out there. That would be fun. That'd be fun to see turn into more like a play than a movie. Would you say?
Well, I wrote it as a play.
Oh, good. I love.
Well, okay.
Yeah. So then go ahead, take us out, Jake.
That's about it. Ken, any parting words before we let you go? Ken?
Yes. I say for landlords and dealing with their tenants.
Yes.
If landlords would treat their tenants like any other businessman in America treats their customers, especially one who pays them tens of thousands of dollars a year, I'd be out of business.
Yeah, it's true.
But I'm safe. It'll never happen. There'll always be some out there that keep me in business, and it's growing. So for the landlord's sake, it's better off to just follow the golden rule and be fair with the tenants.
Ken,
that's brilliant. Until today, I've been doing real estate for 30 years. Jake, Ken, treat your tenant like a customer that you want coming back every month. Yeah, that's great. That's pretty good advice. I like that. Go ahead, Jake. Take us out.
Well, all right. Very good, Ken. Thank you very much. It's Ken Carlson, Cal Tenant Law. And get a hold of him if you have any problem. This is the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff, and we will be right back after this. Thanks. Okay, and we're back, and that was Ken Carlson. And boy, that was a really good interview. And like I said, it was counterintuitive. People wouldn't think that for real estate experts and students that you would want to know about what an eviction attorney has to say.
Yeah, we're hearing the music, so it's really interesting when you just have to realize that you're in business. So, we got a little bit of feedback there. So, anyways, the best thing about this is, Jake, that I think people should take away is the fact that this is a business. Treat your tenants like a customer. and deliver a service that you would deliver, to your mom. Give them a nice place to live. Make sure it's habitable. And I'm not saying put marble and gold in there. I'm just saying make sure everything works. Make sure everything is comfortable. Make sure the rent is commensurate for the value of the property, and so on and so forth. So basically what you want to do is understand that one of the things that we do with Cliff Gager Advanced Real Estate Training, Jake and I want to give you the best available information on how to be a landlord, how to flip houses, how to generate income, how to wholesale properties, how to find the money and create deals. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do. One of the things that you want to do if you want more information is go to realestateexpertonline.com. On there, you'll see a couple of links for our upcoming events. You'll see that there are a bountiful resource of the show here that we do, so you can listen to that. And also, we care. We want you to have success, and that's what we're here for. What do you think about that, Jake?
Well, I think that's true, and like I said before, when I think with the feed we were stepping on each other, but this is counterintuitive. This is the kind of information you wouldn't think that real estate investors would want or would need, but they actually do. Because
it's important.
Like I said in the interview, this guy is out there, and there are other guys like him who are out there, and it behooves you real estate investors not to take not that you're necessarily arrogant, but you may think that it's all your own way, and believe me, it's not. And there are guys like that out there who are consumer advocates, who are tenant advocates, and they can cause problems. They can really cause problems. So don't go down that road.
And on the landlord side of it, you don't want to be a slumlord. You don't want to be the person, with bad properties. And you'll hear about how basically they don't have nice places. You hear a lot about it in the big cities, and so basically we just have to understand that it happens everywhere. It happens in Los Angeles. It happens in New York. It happens in your hometown too. And when people realize that they have to take care of their clients, that's how you get long-term tenants. I've got a friend of mine in Denver. He's got a triplex, and the one person that has been in that one of the units of the triplex has been there, Jake, for 30 years.
Wow.
And basically, if you think about that, she paid that mortgage for that property, and it's kind of crazy. So in addition to helping landlords, we also want to make our tenants into home buyers and flippers too. So go to realestateexpertonline.com. The information is available there for our upcoming events. And Jake, why don't you, we're up on the last minute here. Why don't you just take us out?
We're up on the last minute. We'll be back next week, of course, with another show. But this is Real Estate Expert Online Radio with Jake and Cliff. And stay tuned. We hope you like the interview. We're going to be having some good stuff for you coming up next week as well.
That's right.
That's about it for me. I'm about done. I think we're dragging. I think we're dragging 10 seconds here.
10 seconds.
7,
8.
6,
Yeah. Come on
5,
back next week, and
4.
we'll see you.
Come on back next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Expert Online Radio Show with Jake and Cliff. The real estate investing revolution has only just begun. Want more information on your own personal revolution? Go to realestateexpertonline.com or call 1-800-396-1501. The owners of the show, this station, or any of its affiliates want you to know that real estate investing is risky. You could lose your entire investment. Topics and opinions expressed in the show are for informational and entertainment purposes, not professional advice or even factual reporting. The owners disclaim any responsibility to supplement, correct, or modify the content of any broadcast. Nothing in this content shall be construed to create an agreement with this disclaimer, encourage evasion or disobedience to any law, or constitute a submission to jurisdiction in any state or country. Persons or entities referred to are entirely fictional. No reference to an actual person or entity is intended, but is entirely coincidental.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.